Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Scripting Fridays on Agent Power Huddle. Um, Today, the request I got a couple weeks ago was to cover off-market tools for buyers. So we're going to cover that, and then I'll open it up at the end for questions as well as script questions. So be thinking about circumstance or situation that you've had recently or that you have coming up that you'd like to know what I would say in those situations. That's kind of the whole point of this. But let's dive into off-market tools, shall we? I gotta share my screen if I could remember how to do that. Sorry, if you've been around me, you know that I've had some computer issues. And I finally got my computer back. So uh, I was telling Autumn before we started, it's almost like moving into your house, right? You can't find anything, it's not in the right place. So, anyway, who needs off market access? And the way I want everybody to think about this is when you're competing out in the marketplace with other realtors, you're kind of all fishing in the same pond, right? And the way I describe it to people, especially an example of this conversation would be if you ever meet with an investor who says, yeah, I want to work with you, Ed, because I like what you say, but I'm also going to work with seven other realtors. And I go, well, maybe I'm not the right guy for you. And he'll say, well, what do you mean? And I'll go, well, all seven of those realtors are fishing in the same pond. And if they all send you the same house, who are you going to use? Who are you going to hire? And he'll usually say something like, well, I'll hire whoever sends it to me first. Okay, well, if that's separated by 5 seconds, the guy who came in second place just loses. Like that's just not how I operate. And here's a good script or dialogue for you. I choose to work with people that choose to work with me. So if you want to work with seven people, Godspeed. I'm happy for you. I'm just not going to be one of the seven. And they go, really? And I do what's called a takeaway close, right? Because if I'm meeting with you face to face, I've got a laptop with me. We have a VIP buyer folder that has a bunch of materials and resources for them. And by the time this comes up, I've got that stuff kind of spread out. And I literally start picking it up and doing this and putting it back in my laptop bag. And they go, wait, what are you doing? And I said, I'm not the guy for you. And they go, well, how do I get access to the off market stuff? You'll have to ask those other seven brokers, right? This is why off market is so powerful because you can describe it in a way that paints a picture for that buyer where the on market, normally I would do this horizontally, but since we're on Zoom, I'll do it this way. On market is like this pool of properties, right? Off market is everything outside of that pool, right? Like in my MLS here in Seattle, there's usually between 9 and 10,000 homes in the MLS. There's millions of homes in Washington. So if you can draw that contrast for somebody and explain how you get access to everything, and in my example, competing with seven other agents, they don't. They're only going to look at actives in the MLS and send them to you if they meet your criteria, right? Well, you don't need seven. Like I don't say that to the consumer. I don't say you're being stupid, right? I just say I'm not going to be one of the seven. And then I do the takeaway close and then they usually hire me, right? Because they want access to off-market homes. So let me go back to my screen share and explain how we do it, right? So this also can be and has been my number one lead generator. right? If you put off market access in your ads, Facebook ads, Google LSA, any sort of ad, right? Get priority access to off market properties before they hit the MLS or the internet. That's the script, right? Get priority access to off market properties before they hit the MLS or the internet. Now, you might be thinking the MLS or the internet is one and the same. Kind of is, right? Once they get on the MLS, it permeates the internet. But by drawing a distinction, when I communicate with people, it reinforces in their mind that they're getting it before anyone, right? They might not have that sense if I just said the MLS, but the savvy buyer is listening for the word MLS. So I say both so that I get both prospective clients to go, oh, so I'm first, right? Buyers want off market access so they can avoid competition, right? Find the best deals and just get opportunities that no one else knows about. That's why it's such a huge magnet, right? So, how do you market it? Well, the way you want to think about this is your marketing is going to be in the order that's on the screen. Your efforts are going to be in reverse order, right? Because off market is what's going to attract buyers to you. And that's what you want, right? Is you want buyers. So in your advertising, in your marketing, in your conversations, what do you do? What do you specialize in? I specialize in helping people get off market properties before they hit the MLS or the internet. Does that sound like it would help you find a good deal? The consumer sounds kind of silly saying no to that, right? That's what I want. I want to ask questions that are so obvious that the answer has to be yes, and it has to be hire me, right? So I'm going to promote it off market first. Pre market REO is another form of off market. Here in Seattle, we're one of the top foreclosure broker teams in the marketplace. So we have lists of off market foreclosures that are going to be listed, but they're in the pre market status. So we can promote that and attract a bunch of eyeballs, right? Think about how consumers look at foreclosures. They either look at them with disdain because they think they're crack houses, right? Or they look at them as the best deals in the market. They know that they can get a better deal on a house that's in rough condition, right? And then expireds and canceled can be a source for you, and then active listings. The way you're going to deliver it once they hire you is in reverse order, though, right? Because the MLS makes it really easy to search active listings, right? It's a searchable database. You can put in your filters and your criteria. In our market, you even can see what you're going to get paid if you sell it. It's all quite easy, right? Expireds and cancels are just as easy with one exception. You got to make that extra phone call, right? You got to look and see if there's a house that fits your client's criteria. And if there is, make a phone call to the seller or the listing broker, depending on your rules and your market, and find out, hey, would your seller still consider an offer? Because, a lot of listings that expire and cancel, that wasn't the goal when they listed in the first place. Their goal was to sell, right? So the vast majority of them still would prefer to sell. They just had a failed attempt. But that's a little extra effort than just searching an active listing and booking a showing appointment, right? Then the pre-market REO is the next more difficult one, and then off market is the heaviest lifting. So do you see how we promote it in reverse order, but then we carry it out in the other order because of the ease. And there's nothing misleading or disingenuous about it. It's I'm gonna look in all four buckets for my clients. It's just the order in which I look, right? Because if I can sell an active listing that meets their criteria and they're happy, that's the path of least resistance. So that's the way I would do it. So how do you do it? Off market is direct mail. That's how you get access to the millions of homes that are not on the market. Pretty simple, right? Direct mail has allowed me to sell over 100 homes a year for multiple years in a row. It was so successful that we bought the mailing machines and kept them in our office so we could send out 10,000 letters a week. So it's super effective but it's a numbers game, right? And this is why in that previous slide I said I'm going to do this last because this costs money, it takes time. I'm doing it right now for two clients and it's part of what I do. Hopefully, and this happens with the majority of my buyer clients, we find something in one of the earlier buckets in either the actives or the expireds and canceleds. But if we don't, and you probably are thinking, yeah, Ed, but we're in a low inventory market. That's right. But not you and not me, because I have access to every house in America. Now, you want to know the real magic? Use seller scores. Are you guys familiar with seller scores? Yeah. You can take every house in America or every house in a neighborhood that you are focused on for a client and run that house address through an algorithm. And that algorithm will assign a seller score, which is a who's most likely to sell in the next 24 months. So what we do is we drip a series of 7 letters, and these letters volley between I got a buyer looking in your neighborhood and they identified your house specifically. Would you be interested in selling it or receiving an offer? And I'll actually say, would you be interested in receiving a full market value offer? So they're encouraged, right? They think, oh, I'm not even going to get lowballed. This is great. So that's the first letter. Second letter is I'm an investor. I can close in 10 days, all cash, no repairs. Would that help you? Right? Because some people, the speed would benefit them. Not everybody, but we're going to send 7 letters. So they're going to go from buyer, I got a buyer, to I am the buyer, back to I got a buyer, back to I am the buyer. And we get 4 I got a buyer letters out and 3 I am the buyer letters for a total of 7. And we send them to the top 200 seller scores. I was in a meeting yesterday and an agent said, I started with this list of 1,600 addresses and I got it down to 190. And I said, you need 10 more letters. And he said, why? And I said, because at 200, you can get the every door direct pricing, which is much cheaper postage, right? Some of you probably are familiar with that. Well, if I live in a neighborhood of about 1,000 homes, I can score all 1,000 homes and then sort them by seller score from highest to lowest and cream off the top the 200 highest scores and start dripping mail on them. Pretty simple, right? The average, when I send 200 letters times 7 letters, right? That's 1,400 letters that are somewhere between 60 and 80 cents each. So I'll have spent $1,200, let's say. The average is I get 2 to 3 deals with in my market an average commission of over $34,000. So is spending 1,200 worth getting 68,000? I'm not very good at math, but I'd say that's pretty decent ROI, wouldn't you? Right? So we drip those letters over a 3 week period, and then 2 or 3 people will raise their hands and either respond to the I got a buyer messaging or respond to the I am the buyer messaging. And then I book an appointment. That's how the numbers work out. Pretty good ROI, right? So the question for you is, do you have clients that are focused on a neighborhood? You can't really afford to do it for all of your county, right? Plus, it doesn't make any sense, right? Because you're going to have high seller scores in a neighborhood where your client doesn't even want to live. But you can definitely do this once they start to narrow it down. I've got two right now. They both said, I want to be in this neighborhood. Great. I'll get going. So I go pull a list from my title company for the whole neighborhood, and then I push it through a seller scoring model, and then I start mailing the top 200. You guys are in the way. All right. How many clients do you think would sign with you if they knew you had more to offer than just the MLS? That's it. Pretty straightforward, right? Any questions on how we do that or how you could do that and implement it? And if not, we can open it up to scripting questions. You guys are awfully quiet today. So remember the buyer script, right? I can get you priority access to off-market properties before they hit the MLS or the internet. Do you see how that would help you find a good deal? Can you tell I've said that a few million times? That's my elevator pitch for buyers. If I'm go out to dinner with friends and meet somebody new and they go, what do you do? I'm a real estate broker. I help buyers get priority access to off-market properties before they hit the MLS or the internet. And for sellers, I have a sell for free program. It's a pretty good elevator pitch, isn't it? It definitely perks their ears up. And it's easy for them to remember. Not so they can recite it, but they'll go back to work the next day and somebody will say, I'm getting married or I'm getting divorced or I'm doing something that triggers a real estate transaction. And they'll go, you should call this guy I met last night because he'll sell your house for free.
Hey Ed, can you explain that sell for free program?
Yeah. So we have sign writers that say, buy this home, I'll sell your house for free. And the reason I'm able to do that is because I'm now double ending my listing and I can do theirs for free. Now, with the NAR settlement and here in Washington, we have Senate Bill 5191. We're not allowed to use the word free anymore. So I don't use the sign writers anymore to generate leads, but I'll explain the program in my listing presentation or in a conversation because I still can sell their house for free if I choose.
So you would have to have them as a buyer purchasing. The seller would have to buy a property, and then you would have the buyer for their property. Is that what you're saying?
Let's say you're the seller, right? I list your home. I've already explained to you that it's unwise not to offer a commission to a buyer's agent. So you're in agreement that you're going to compensate the buyer or buyer's agent. And then a buyer comes along and they want to take advantage of the sell for free program. I'm going to double end your house and sell their house for free.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Mhm.
And there's some nuance to the contract because uh, I'm not sure about California, but here in Washington, dual agency is legal, but it's not smart. It's too much risk, that a couple of years down the road, somebody's going to decide that they didn't get a good deal because Ed represented both parties and they could sue me. So going back to Kevin's example, what I would do is write the contract so that the buyer is technically and on the contract in writing is unrepresented. And that way I get both commissions. So you'll want to make sure that's how you fill out your listing agreement as well. A lot of listing agreements default to that. If it's an unrepresented buyer, the listing broker gets both commissions. Our forms have changed enough now that it's explicit and you have to fill it out a certain way to do that or to say that, which isn't hard. You just got to make sure you know your forms.
Hey, Ed, I have another question on
Sure.
so you mentioned when you're doing your mailers as far as the sales score, what what do you use to figure out the sales score? Uh, I understand what that means. I know there's programs out there, but what do you mean by how do you find that sales score as far as the most likely to sell?
Yeah, great question, Kevin, because there's actually about a dozen companies that do this. There's also typically your county records or your title company has a free seller score number built in. But you don't really want the free one because those seller scores are purely a function of how long have they owned the property, what's their equity position, et cetera. Um, the best one I've used is a company called First.io. They had a 673 data point algorithm, and it covered everything from not only how long have you lived there and what do you owe, but what level of education do you have? What level of education and how old are your children? What are your spending habits online? And a whole slew of different, almost like Big Brother ish, uh, you know, research, I guess is the best word. And that one worked great. The problem with First.io is they got bought by Remax. So unless you're with Remax, you won't have access to it any longer. So I'm actually testing Revaluate right now, and it's done okay. It's not as great as First.io, but there are about 10 other companies. So I'm just going to test them all and see who's got the best. But you could definitely use Revaluate straight away. And they're working on API to connect it to KV Core. So if you're with EXP, that could be a thing that just makes your job easier. Good question though.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions or scripting dialogue needs? We
I
can
was just
wrap
going to
up.
say, with the market the way that it is right now in Seattle, I mean, there's multiple offers in a lot of the situations. My buyers are sending me properties and they're being taken pending, within 3 to 5 days. So a lot of buyers are feeling uh, exhausted or tired of the fast
Yeah.
paced market. So this is a good alternative to kind of giving them a little bit of ease that they're not going to get bid out.
Yeah. That's a great observation, Molly, because you're right. That's one of the best benefits in a hot market, is that you can negotiate without any chance of competing offers because nobody knows that seller is interested in selling. So great observation. Also, when you're in that kind of market, use those losses to motivate your client to write stronger offers and move quicker and do all that. Like, I've always been a big believer, if you write an offer and don't win, if you don't leverage that into educational benefit for your client, you just wasted your time. Like, that's a blown opportunity. So, but it's a smart skill, that's one of the things we train on, is writing winning offers, because there's dozens of things you can do in an offer besides price to make your offer more attractive to the seller. A few years ago, I was measuring it, and we had 36 sales where our buyers were not the highest bidder, but still won because of those skills. So practice. All right. Well, if there aren't any other questions, we can wrap this up a couple minutes early. That'll be my gift to you, is to give you back 3 minutes. All right. Well, have a great day, everybody. Thanks for hanging out with me. Hopefully it was worth your while.
If you'd like more information or to get connected to the Agent Power Huddle, join our free Facebook group. This call was designed for the agents in our EXP organization, but open to any agent from any brokerage. If you're a guest and you're interested in learning more about EXP or our specific resources within the Agent Collective, reach out to the person who invited you to this call to get more info. Produced by the Agent Collective Media Network.